Thank you, everyone. And I'm very pleased to be chair for this next session on natural capital, ecosystem services, and blue economy. And may I ask the first speaker, Ferdinando Boero from the European Marine Board and president of the Dohrn Foundation, to take the floor.
For this, I would like to have my presentation on. I sent it to the organization. Okay. Can I have the command of the presentation? Thank you. So the title is Natural Capital, Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, Price versus Value. There is one ocean on the planet, and it covers 71% of the Earth's surface. But the ocean is not a surface, it's a volume. With its about 4,000 kilometers of depth, it represents more than 90% of the space that is inhabited by life. And it's a very dynamic and connected space. This is the Great Ocean Conveyor, and it's regulated by the ice formation at the poles. And there are 3 sites of deep water formation also in the Mediterranean, which is a miniaturized ocean. The formation of the ice triggers the currents that connect all the planet, and that regulate also the atmosphere with their flows. And we are interrupting these fluxes with global warming because the polar ices are melting, and the fresh water coming from this melting ice is blocking the currents, for instance, the Gulf current that is mitigating the climate in Europe. So we are very linked to the ocean, even if we don't understand properly, especially for those who live in land, the bearing of the ocean on our well-being. So when we speak about the environment, we speak about the ocean. Very often when we speak about the environment, we automatically think about terrestrial environment. And then there is marine. There is ecology and marine ecology. There is not marine ecology, there is ecology. And the ecology of the planet is determined by the presence of the ocean. There are 2 laws of nature that are present in the origin of species, and the first one is the law of growth. All plants and animals are tending to increase at a geometrical ratio. But then there is another law, the law of the limit. Although some species may be now increasing more or less rapidly in numbers, all cannot do so, for the world would not hold them. So these 2 laws are mitigating each other. For the economists, there is only the law of growth, and they disregard the law of the limit. Things have a price in economy, and we want the economies to grow. If the growth of the economic capital stops, we speak about stagnation. And if it's reversed, we speak about recession. So the only thing we ask for is growth. And so we can see here the growth of our economies, which is the target of all our economic action. All want growth. And this is the way we are conceiving our relationship with the natural environment. There is the economy sphere that regulates society, and that takes resources from nature. And economy thinks in terms of prices, whereas in nature there are values. And economy prevails over society and nature. We are now thinking about sustainability, and sustainability is reversing this primacy. There is the nature sphere that contains the society and that contains the economy. And the laws of nature prevail over the laws of society and the laws of economy. So we cannot dream to govern our activities by giving centrality to economics, leading to a system that disregards the values of nature. Values are not for sale because they have no price and money can't buy them. And anyway, to sell something at a price, we need to recognize the owner of what is sold. And who is the owner of nature? The sale of nature suffers of the tragedy of the commons. And so, as we heard earlier, most of the environment of the planet is out of our national jurisdictions, and there are no regulations on how to manage it and exploit it. So the owners of nature become those, and it's written in a different way, in italics, the owners, those who think that they own nature are those who take advantage of its resources. And also those who spoil the resources of the natural capital to generate income. And very often the generation of the natural capital have a price that others have to pay. The ecologists proposed the concept of natural capital because they wanted to speak the language of economies. And so they were giving prices to nature. And they were valuing in monetary terms the goods and services of nature. But the natural capital is summarized with biodiversity and ecosystem functioning. And it's an ecological concept. And it has been translated into economic terms in order to make the decision makers understand that these things are valuable. But this was done by giving them a price. And this means that, for instance, if we estimate that the price of a species is 10 million euros, then we can lead it to extinction if we earn 20 millions by leading it towards extinction. So it's not so ethical to give prices to everything, especially to natural assets. And we are paying now the consequences of the way we are envisaging our relationship with nature. What is the price of a climate that is favorable for our well-being? We can give a price to the consequences in terms of less resources for us or whatever, but what is the price of our health? Is there any money that can buy the air we breathe and the health of our bodies and the bodies of our children? What is the price of the beauty of nature? Is there any money that can buy it? Is there a price tag on these things? With the natural capital, price tags have been put on natural assets. It is never too late now to realize that this approach is wrong, and we are realizing that we don't have enough money to fix the problems that we caused to make money. And for some people, the impossibility of fixing the problems that we are causing is a good reason to continue the same old way. There is nothing to do, so let's go on like that. And we hope that technology will fix all the problems. technology, as we have heard, some solutions of geoengineering or whatever are causing even more problems in other places. So this approach is to be reversed. What to do then? First of all, we have to become aware that if something grows, something else degrows. And as long as the economic capital grows, there is the degrowth of the natural capital. And this is the price that we have to pay for our enterprise. But then there is knowledge. If we want to achieve the ecological transition, we must base it on knowledge. And the instructions are in the Bible. For instance, we must take care of the garden. And so in the Genesis, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it, not to exploit it to the extreme as we are doing now. But then another message of Genesis is to know biodiversity. The only task that God gave to man was to name animals. Naming animals means knowing biodiversity. And our culture started with the paintings in the caves, knowing biodiversity. So this is the root of our knowledge. And we must preserve biodiversity. In the Genesis, again, when the universal flood arrives, God asks Noah to put a couple of animals of all species in the ark. So we have to preserve biodiversity. We have to know it, naming animals, and we have to preserve it. If we build an ark, we have to put all the animals inside. This is suggesting something about the proposals of colonizing other planets. The spaceship that will bring us to another planet should contain all biodiversity in order to rebuild a world that is favorable to us. And we don't know the biodiversity that is in the planet, as Lisa was showing before. The divine mission of knowing biodiversity has not been accomplished yet. And there is no technology that tells us what species are there. There is not a magic button we can press to have the names of the species, as God was asking to do at the beginning of our history. Francis delivered this message to the whole mankind with his encyclical Laudato Si. He asks for the ecological conversion. This is the first time that a religious authority of this size, and there is no bigger one, asks for the conversion to a science. And the science is ecology. And if you read the encyclical, the words biodiversity and ecosystem functioning are very recurring. The words are recurring dozens of times. And strange enough, the European Union, with the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, calls for good environmental status, and so an healthy ocean, in all EU waters by 2020, an objective that has not been reached. And it has biodiversity and ecosystem functioning as its pillar. So the two messages, that of the scientific community and that of Pope Francis, perfectly coincide. The first descriptor of good environmental status asks for the maintenance of biodiversity. But how can we maintain something that we do not know? And I take an occasion here to remember that Anton Dohrn, when he founded the zoological station that we are celebrating here, the first thing he did was to promote the publication of monographs on the fauna and flora of the Gulf of Naples. And so naming animals and plants. and there are 40 of these monographs. Nowadays, there are less and less people who are able to write monographs as those. So we are very technologically advanced, but our technology is not answering the question, how many species are there on Earth? In the encyclical, Francis explains the functioning of ecosystems. It is hard for us to accept that the way natural ecosystems work is exemplary. Plants synthesize nutrients which feed herbivores. These in turn become food for carnivores, which produce significant quantities of organic waste, which give rise to new generations of plants. And so the ecosystem functioning is explained in the encyclical. But the most common way in which ecosystems function on planet Earth is this. Apparently, there are only carnivores in the water. In the water column, you see a white shark eating a tuna, eating a mackerel, eating a sardine. But all these guys start their life as tiny larvae, and they feed the herbivore on the herbivores. And the herbivores are copepods that we do not see. And the copepods, who are the herbivores, feed on the plants that are the phytoplankton. And then all these living beings die and are decomposed by bacteria that recycle the living matter. And below the euphotic zone, there is marine snow that feeds the deep ocean together with systems that are independent from above, as Lisa was showing. How many people are aware that copepods are the most important animals of the planet? And how many people are aware that phytoplankton are the most important plants of the planet? And how many people are aware that bacteria are the most important organisms of the planet? Again, in the encyclical, we have this. It may well disturb us to learn the extinction of mammals and birds since they are more visible. But the good functioning of ecosystems requires fungi, algae, worms, insects, reptiles, and an innumerable variety of microorganisms. Some less numerous species, although generally unseen, nonetheless play a critical role in maintaining the equilibrium of a particular place. So the ecological conversion is a precondition to the ecological transition. And in the encyclical, there are many instances, many citations of the word value. And here I report some of them. It is not enough, however, to think of different species merely as potential resources. So the goods and services that we are putting a price tag on to be exploited, though, while overlooking the fact that they have value in themselves. And again, there are many other sentences like these that call for the values of nature. And this is the last one that I want to cite that says that we need new paradigms and forms of power derived from technology to seek other ways of understanding of economy and progress, the value proper of each creature, the human meaning of ecology, the need of forthright and honest debate, the serious responsibility of international and local policy, the flow-away culture of the proposal of a new lifestyle. The questions will not be dealt with once and for all, but reframed and included again and again. The word price is present just twice, and it refers to what the poor have to pay as a consequence of the commercial use of nature. So the ecological transition should recognize the primacy of nature in planning our future. The encyclical should be taught in school as a course in ecology, and I invite the Pontifical Academy to push for this because it's a course in ecology that is missing in our school. Thank you very much.
Fernando, for the very interesting presentation. And if there are any questions?
A provocation, because encyclica quoted the Genesis about the creation. And in the text of the Genesis say, in the beginning of everything, God created heaven and earth. The earth then hath not form. Everything was a deep sea covered with darkness. And the Spirit of God moved on the water. So we speak about water. We speak about the sea. And maybe the cardinal that know very well the encyclical was one of the collaborators, can say something about this because it's a biblical question. I think that is an evolution in the mind of the people from the sea, the consideration of the sea from something that is like the darkness, like the Leviathan, like to a more positive consideration for the health of the people and the origin of the whole life, this kind of thing. But it's important for the relation of the human with the natural, with the ocean.
No, certainly. So I can say something, but this a fear is that it may go a lot into terms and discussion of whatever. Probably just a brief response. It can be a long response, but probably because the Genesis thing that you quote. Immediately does not use the word sea, which would have been yama. It talks about the depths or the deeps, and the deeps, is that the sea or not? Okay, what the sea is first talked about when God introduces the heavens, okay, to split the waters above from the waters below. Okay, and then the waters below begin to have the fish and everything that is there, and the waters above become the source of rainfall. Then you begin to have some kind of cosmos. The presentation, however, is that at the beginning was chaos. Chaos was not sea. They talk about chaos, but chaos is not exactly sea. So to identify the sea as chaos, it's not supported by Scripture itself. That's why I say it could be a lot of discussion about whatever. But the thing is that before the composition of this account in Genesis, there were stories in the ancient Near East, Babylon and all, which talks about the earth created out of a conflict between the heavens and the sea. And the sea is represented as a dragon called Tiamat, which was slain, and out of his body, creation, whatever started. It's not the same thing present because the point of creation is to affirm the ultimate power of God. So there was no conflict in the case of Genesis and God's creation, as if there was some force against which God had to, fight and then defeat and all of that. So let me generally say that in scriptures, the sea basically has two values. It is the place of fish and animals which enable people to also pray. Okay, the wonder of sea enhances God's own power to dominate the sea. It causes the wind to calm down. It causes the waves to calm down. So it's a domain in which God's power is made manifest. At the same time, it is also the area of travel between islands and between lands and whatever, which has been observed this morning over here. But at the same time, it is also the area where people go to make a particular experience of God's own power over anything that exists. So you have all of these multiple meanings of this reality, often negative, but also often positive, going from Genesis to the book of Revelation. From Genesis to the book of Revelation, the sea always has this ambivalent character. Appears to be positive, manifesting God's power, but also is the domain of the opposition to God's power, the area of Leviathan, the dragon, and all the underworld and all of this. So I don't know whether Monsieur Sanchez, I don't know the objective of the question, whether simply to present what the sea is or to...
It's an evolution. Consideration of the sea from a negative or chaotic things to, yeah. No.
Yeah, there are many things in the Bible that need to be read carefully. For instance, in my opinion, the forbidden fruit is the limit that God posed to our use of the garden. And when we exceeded this limit, we were thrown out of the garden and we had to sweat for getting food. This is the shift from hunters and gatherers to agriculture. We started agriculture because we overexploited the garden. Of course, there is also the knowledge of good and evil. But in my opinion, it could be taken even more literally. We overexploited the garden, and we were condemned to sweat to get our food. And we are doing that right now in the ocean, because we are shifting from hunters and gatherers with fisheries to aquaculture. So this is the last Eden, and we are being chased from it right now. And we should consider this very carefully, I think.